Welcome back to Unfinished Business. This is the podcast where we have candid conversations about what it really takes to build a business from the ground up, how success gets defined along the way, and the lessons that it takes to get there, and the work that is never quite finished. So today's conversation is really interesting and one because we're stepping into an industry where things are very complex, fast moving, and often disorganized behind the scenes. So today I'm joined by Lee Blaylock, founder of HyperWater AI, which is a platform built to bring clarity and structure to the construction bidding process, helping subcontractors and general contractors connect, communicate, and move their projects forward more efficiently. So Lee, I'm really glad that you're here. I'm excited to reconnect and learn about what's happening at HyperWater.
Hey, great to be here. Let's dig in.
All right. So let's give our audience some context because I think, when you jump into developing a product that solves a problem, it's always curious, like, where did that begin? So is construction a part of your background? And if not, why was this a segment that ultimately you decided to solve for?
My first startup was a company called Service Lane, kind of like an early Angie's List, because I knew that the yellow pages were going to go away. So it's actually it's rooted in online lead generation, because I believe the internet is the most powerful lead generation tool there's ever been. It's measurable, it's scalable, et cetera. And so many of the things that I've been involved with have been lead generation. And the last company I started was in the construction space, and we've rolled that into what we're doing now at HyperWater.
What was it in particular in the construction space that led to this idea?
So a conversation with the customers, right? So I believe that AI agents are going to be fundamentally transforming every single business out there. The LLMs like a Grok or a Mistral or ChatGPT or Claude, those are multiple billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars models, and they're available to just a few companies. But every single business, whether they know it yet or not, is going to be completely transformed by what's called an AI agent. And an agent, a software agent, is actually it's a software application that can complete a task without any human interaction. And the cruise control in your car and the thermostat in your house are actually software agents. They're not AI, but they're software agents. And so when you apply AI and you apply business process, you can actually program software to complete a human task. And so, as I was talking to customers of ours, primarily subcontractors and general contractors, and then also suppliers, we just found a very, very large opportunity where if I'm a commercial subcontractor, I receive tens to thousands of invitations on a daily or weekly basis. They're coming from about a dozen different software applications because the GC1 uses X software, GC2 uses Y software. Doesn't matter. I still have to get it. And it may be a single project, and I'm getting invited by 6 GCs and they're using 4 different software applications. The only thing I have is an email inbox, and then I have to manually extract all that because those are jobs I'm interested in bidding. And I may bid 3 to 7% of the invitations I get on a weekly basis. And so automating all that and having an AI agent build out calendars, allow it to automate the assignment of my team, to look at the bid documents, compare them with my preferences of the kinds of jobs that I like to bid on, union, non-union, size job, location, whether it's a public job, like a school or a courthouse, or if it's a private job. As a sub, I give the system my preferences, and our AI automatically reads that and it scans it and it starts to make recommendations. And we do some things from there on that add value to both the GC and the sub. So it's a matter of you have a core thesis, you go speak with your customers, you listen to their business problems. Because one thing a lot of entrepreneurs need to understand is your customers understand their business problems. They don't always understand how to apply technology to it. So back in
Yeah.
the 1870s, if I came to you, Kimberly, and said, "Hey, let's talk about how we can get your stagecoach and your horse from point A to point B." You'd be talking about wheels, you'd be talking about other things. You wouldn't be talking about something called the internal combustion engine. And the first internal combustion engines were so much slower and so much more difficult to operate. And you actually had to have an engineer, and it would only go 2 or 3 miles an hour. But it had such powerful direction of where that technology was going that obviously we know what happened to the horse and the buggy versus the car. And so
Yeah.
helping listen to your customers and what their business problems are, and then you apply your expertise in technology is oftentimes a winning combination.
great analogy. I like to look at it that way. So I mean, you've shared a lot. So let me break this out because how I'm seeing this is okay, for the subcontractor, clear problem, right? My inbox is full. I'm working. A lot of these companies may be smaller operations. And so they're putting out fires all day. They're busy. And like seems like the bottleneck, even though there was tons of opportunity, was really them being able to respond quick enough. So there's clearly a problem and a breakdown there. But what was the breakdown between, as you were learning more about, talking to more clients, between contractors and subs, or excuse me, GCs and
Yeah.
subs?
There's a bell curve of subs. There are, two folks in a truck, but we're on the commercial side. Some of our earliest customers are, $300-400 million divisions of multi-billion-dollar subcontractors. So the perception of, hey, this is, really small company, I'm really busy. That's really not the market that we typically play in. It's the opposite problem. I'm getting thousands of invitations on a monthly basis. How do I go manage that? I've got multiple different divisions. There's a company called Performance Contracting Group, one of our first customers. They have 30 locations. They're $2 billion. They have 9,000 employees. You know how many invitations they get to bid on a daily basis, and they
Yeah.
track it manually? So
Oh
think
my
about that
gosh.
issue, right? So that's on the sub side. On the general contractor side, it's what's called bid coverage. If I'm a general contractor, I'm going to really distill it down here. If I'm a general contractor and I'm looking to get pricing and I'm trying to win my job from my client because I'm competing with four other contractors, what's called a hard bid, or maybe it's a negotiated bid where the general contractor selected us, but I have to be very transparent about the pricing I get in about 32 different trades. So you got mechanical, electrical, plumbing, concrete, roofing, et cetera. I have to share the pricing that I get with my owner. So they're seeing that I'm getting them a good price. And so it's called bid coverage. And so I need roughly 100 bidders to come up with an overall price. And to do that, I either have to invite a few hundred bidders to a few thousand bidders. And it's based on what we call gravity in the market. If I'm a big general contractor and I've got an office and I'm in, Miami and I'm always in Miami, all the subs know me and I'm not going to have a problem getting bids from those folks. That's one dynamic. If I'm that very same general contractor, I'm $5 billion, but I'm calling on some company that's building a retail or a data center or something like that, and we're going to Portland, Maine. They don't know who I am. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter how big I am. That this is a very, very fragmented industry. So I don't have gravity in that market, and I may have to send invitations out to thousands of subcontractors just to get 100 qualified bidders. And
Oh,
if
wow.
the general contractors, when they send it out, every single bid software has a email that says, "Are you bidding? Are you not bidding? You're undecided." And less than 20% of the subs click on those because there's no value for the sub in clicking on that. And so for the 80%, that general contractor has to get on the phone calling them, and it costs them thousands to tens of thousands of dollars on a monthly basis because the software to manage the flow from the subs has never been built. All of these bid management applications, they're built for the GC so they can track who's bidding and they can send out the bids. And it's free for the general contractor to invite the sub, but it's the sub that has to pay for reviewing this. And so the signal to noise ratio is completely off. And the subs have what's called invite or bid. It's called ITB, invite to bid. They have ITB fatigue. And what we built is a tool that is first built for the sub to manage their inflow and to communicate internally, hey, we're going to bid this job or not. So they can, the finance people can get their bonding, or let's say it's in downtown New York and, you need to put together a logistics plan because how are you going to get a crane, through the streets of New York if you're putting in the big
Yeah.
HVAC, right? So the essence of it is that we built the first time that anybody's ever built a tool for a subcontractor to manage their inflow, and it's connected to the bid coverage board of the GC.
The GC.
And I'll talk about the suppliers we keep on going.
Okay, that makes sense. So, how did you come up with this, Lee? I mean, I know you were talking to people, but when did this click that this could be a whole new ecosystem?
Well, I've been very fortunately married for 35 years, and it's because my wife is very patient, but I am wholly driven by efficiency. What's the most efficient way to do something? I used to work for Dell Computer for 7 years. My dad died when I was a junior in college. Started working for Dell as badge number 244. Spent 7 years there. I was the first person Michael sent overseas. I spent 4 months in London and 2 years in Germany. And so everything that I've thought about is how do you do things more efficiently? And Dell was a more efficient way to get a computer to a desktop supported and all this other stuff. And so it's really just you have a core thesis, and our thesis is that agents are going to transform all business. And you just listen to your customers, you listen to what their problems are. And then, the fact that my whole entire career has been mostly around leads and lead distribution, lead generation, et cetera, you marry those two things together. And if you're an investor or if you are an entrepreneur, it's what's called pattern recognition. You just observe things and you apply your patterns that you see to your industry, your business problems, your customers' business problems. And if you really pay attention when you're interacting with other applications, software, et cetera, mobile or desktop, you're going to see tools, you're going to see techniques, you're going to see UX hacks that you really like that you can apply to your business. And let me kind of break down to something that literally happened this morning. Um, we all know what a pencil looks like. You go onto LinkedIn, you got your profile, you click on that pencil, and what does it do? You can edit. Okay. Well, you have to actually click on that pencil to open the edit file. If you go in and that is built for either a casual user or a power user. And that's another thing. If you're building software application, are you building this for who's your persona? Who's your, not only your customer, but who's your customer type? We can get into that too if you want to. The essence of
Yeah.
it, we use another application called Jira. Jira is an engineering ticketing organization. So that is we as an idea, we have an idea, we assign the engineer, we put together all this stuff about the ticket so the engineer knows exactly what to build, right? And we're blowing through scores to hundreds of tickets on a daily basis. Well, we don't have to click on the edit and then edit the button. We just click on that field, it automatically opens up and it's right there. So it saves me moving, it saves everything. So in a list view, I can blow through things a lot quicker than click on this and click on this, click on this and click on this. So we're
Yeah.
applying that level of detail in terms of design to a power user like a subcontractor, like a general contractor that's in this tool every single day. And they don't want the fluff. They just want to power through and get what they want to get done because they don't want to use software. They want to go solve
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is kind of interesting because it seems to me like there's a process. So, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. What if there is someone that has an idea and to your point, and I'm glad that you shared it and we've been covering this a lot lately is I agree with you. I think AI is going to revolutionize, the way that we accomplish tasks, especially tasks that take up too much time and bandwidth. But what if they say, I have no tech background whatsoever. I have no experience in software development. How did you even know how to begin tackling this problem from a technology standpoint?
Well, as I tell my kids, scars are bad to get, but good to have. So it's through trial and error. It's through grit and determination. It's going to define whether you're going to be a successful entrepreneur or not. As Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And as you get punched in the face, you need to, stand up. You need to have the grit and determination. We can talk about this. It's a great, great topic if you want to go down that maze. But the essence of it is that your ability to figure it out and to learn quickly is really important, deterministic if you are going to be successful or not as an entrepreneur. I actually call entrepreneurship an undertaking of a business enterprise with the complete, total, utter lack of respect of the resources you currently control. And you just have to figure it out. And there's this mythos in Silicon Valley that, oh, this, 19-year-old or 22-year-old, they just started this business and it just came to them. It was so easy. That is a complete outlier. It's most of these companies, there have been businesses where somebody's been thinking about this problem for 5 or 10 years, and it's called the entrepreneurial make. And they've thought about the problem. They've thought deeply about the problem. They were up at night thinking about the problem. They understand the nuances of the customer's interaction. And they've either had this as a project, as a hobby, or it's something they've been doing for a long time, or they just have a passion for it. They've got some unique insights. But the essence of it is that you have to have that insight. You have to have the grit and determination. You have to be capable of being misunderstood. Another great quote is from Jeff Bezos, that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be comfortable with being misunderstood, potentially for a very long time.
Huh.
And if your core thesis is correct and you represent a larger market, you're going to find a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Another thing, I'm not close friends with Michael Dell, but we went on several triple dates because there's a guy that was in his weddings, in my wedding. And when he was 25, 26 years old, I'd ask him in so many words, I'd ask him, hey, what's your secret? And what he said is, I've always known exactly where we could go, but I haven't always known how to get there. And so I'm going to listen to both executives that are experienced and I'm going to question conventional wisdom, because if you question conventional wisdom, you're going to find opportunity. You're going to be doing things that other people have never done. And
Yeah.
again, going back to Bezos, sometimes you may be right, sometimes you may be wrong. Sometimes people don't really understand you. The first month that I joined, Time Magazine had a article about Michael called him La Enfant Terrible, and that the manufacturing model of mass customizing a computer would break down at $250 million. Well, I think that that was proved to be pretty wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So curious, going back to what you said. So where with this well, one, how long was this idea kind of toiling around in your mind? And where were you at what point were you misunderstood when you were trying to convey what you were learning to someone? What was the reaction initially?
It's a very detailed answer, but at a very, very high level, you have two core theses. One is how do we apply technology to leads? You have another thesis around AI agents. And then you're listening to your customer and you're finding this pattern recognition of a lot of subcontractors having this problem of trying to basically ascertain which jobs are they going to spend time on. Because in many of these trades, it's tens of thousands of dollars to put together just a bid invitation.
I didn't know that. Why is that?
Well, let's break it down. If you've got a $30 million Embassy Suites hotel, 9 million to 15 million are materials. And if you're the mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractor on that job, 20% to 35% of the 9 million to 15 million is just what you're bidding on.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could put hundreds of hours into a bid invitation to go give that general contractor a bid. Because remember, you're taking on the risk. You're saying, I'll do it for this price. It's not time and materials. It's like our government. Hey, we're just going to charge you we're going to charge you 20% more. I'm going to work like that. Right. So the essence of it is that you take, once again, your core thesis, what you believe in, you listen to your customers and you apply that dynamic, and that will help you kind of get to basically where you're going to come up with your core thesis of what your business is, your value proposition, who you're competing against, what your new markets are. The other thing that's well known in the technology world, and this is mostly from Peter Thiel, he said, if you enter into an existing industry, you're forever going to be on the treadmill of competition unless you change the rules of how the game is played. So think about Uber, think about Airbnb, where they didn't go partner with the Black Car Association or the American Hotel Association. They came up with an idea that nobody ever thought about, tapped
Yeah.
into new information. Kimberly, if I came to you 25 years ago and said, hey, I got this idea. I think millions of people are going to let strangers in their house just to earn some money. Or they're going to have somebody, in the side of their car just to earn money. And you're going to say, Blaylock, you're effed in the head. He doesn't not do that. Well, what I would tell you, Kimberly, is that that behavior actually already existed on Craigslist. Hey, I've got a lake house. I'll give you $2,000, right? Or I got to drive to Fort Lauderdale and I got to leave by 2 o'clock. And, I got to leave by 2 o'clock. Let's go share gas. So the behavior is already there. What they
Yeah.
did tapped into a lot of different things, but one of them was a desire for, in 2008 specifically, Airbnb. A lot of people are hating it. They couldn't even make rent. So this is a way for them to do something. Combine just those two companies alone, take out Lyft, take out some of the other companies like Verbo, just combine those two companies have a $250 billion market cap because what they did is they questioned conventional wisdom of what would be truthful. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're pitching a venture capital fund, the venture capital funds that have done this research that where their investment thesis there, it's called IC, their investment committee, was unanimous that think it's a good idea, those generally were not the breakout successes. The breakout successes where the culture of the IC, the investment community with the venture community is, hey, there's enough conviction that we're going to do the deal, but there's some partners that I'd never do this. I think it's going to fail. And the reason is that the
Uh-huh.
entrepreneur got enough time to make all the mistakes you're going to make with early products before the competition set in. Because if everybody's, hey, this is a really good idea, we're going to throw in, right? There's pets.com. We're going to, it's pets food on the internet, right? That really didn't get very successful. But you look at the Airbnbs, you look at other companies, we could mention it, where I don't think it's going to be successful. And they were able to fail. The market gave them grace to fail with their early products so they could get the product right. So by the time that the market was developed, their product was mature enough, is more advanced enough that they had a very solid competitive position. Those are important ways to find opportunity in marketplace.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that, but you frame it in a way that makes it easy to understand what that process is like. So what were some of your early feedback and what has turned out to be a more difficult experience than you expected?
Everything. It's just, just, so when you're in the B2B world, traditionally go build an MVP, go put it in the hands of customers and go iterate, right? And that's true for many instances. And if we had a model where we were selling our software to subcontractors and they were paying us enough money for a direct sale where we spend the time with them, well, that's one thing. And you go build an MVP and you kind of iterate on it, right? We're a little different. One of the things that we've identified is that AGC, imagine this, Kimberly, if anybody who's watching this, imagine if you had one customer and that one customer is motivated to get thousands of customers on your platform for self-service reasons, not your reasons. The core customer, they have thousands, they have motivation to get thousands of your customers online. You have to have a mature product. They can't
Yeah.
invite 1,000 and just have kind of a crap experience. It's got to be really, really compelling. So we're about 7, 8 months later in where our business is relative to where we want to be, if I'm just dead honest. So we had the idea in the summer 24. We had a technology, basically, let's call it a proof of concept in October. We really impressed the partners that we were talking to. We formed a legal entity on October 9th of 2024. We've actually had code on the internet since April 30th. We're trying to get out really, really quickly. And then we knew we were going to have to iterate kind of sometime around the summer of 25 that, hey, we're ready to go. We're ready to go. And as we talk to more and more subs, more and more suppliers, more and more general contractors, they're like, now you need this and need this. And hey, if you build, and this is truncating this, but over, let's say, most of Q3, okay, we never pivoted, which is really fortunate because that's another dynamic you can talk to if you want to. We were always, we're solving the exact same problem. We're just more mature in our thought process and what we're doing to affect this functionality that we got 6 different general contractors that invited over 82,000 unique subcontractors to bid at least one time on a job last year to say,
Wow.
hey, if you get this product working and it's working in the way that we have worked together to define these features and functions, I know my subs are going to freaking love this. And our business model is very unique for construction, pattern recognition. You don't pay for LinkedIn, you don't pay for Dropbox, you might, but most people don't. And so it's called product-led growth. You let the product lead the growth. You don't have to call us for a demo. I'll give you a little entrepreneur advice. If you see a business says call us for a demo, that business is likely not good, and it's a new company. It's likely not going to be successful. I just straight up, it's not going to be. And it might be a little profitable. Might have a $10 million business. That might be your opportunity. Hey, I would love a $10 million business. But if you're going to build something that's truly industry impactful, industry changing, you have to have your teachers teach you about what they do. Then you apply machine learning, you tie AI, you apply other things, and you sell that information back to them or to others. That is the way that you get to these next $100 billion companies, because that's the only thing that's scalable when you have a marketplace where all of everybody's, 5 billion people are connected via phone, right? It's
Yeah.
just too hard to go hire all those sales reps, set up all those meetings, get the vice president of chocolate sundaes to agree to a meeting. You have to sell, you know, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of revenue. So if you're an Oracle, you're an SAP, you're a Salesforce, hey, that's the way they go to market. But if you are trying to go build something and scale it quickly, you have to have your users teach you, and then you machine learn that, and then you sell that information back to them and others. That's if you look at Uber, you look at Airbnb, talks about, there's many others you can talk about, but that's how these companies really scaled up, right? And so the
Yeah.
essence of it is that have your core thesis, and you got to have a more clever model than one where it's like, hey, I'm just going to have them sign up and, we're going to set up a demo and everything else.
I'm going to go forward. So what you said, teachers, have your teachers or your users, shoot holes basically in the product is how I'm hearing you say this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so what did your teachers teach you in this process?
A lot. Let me give you a specific example. Let me think about this quickly as I can. So a subcontractor, they have multiple offices and they have different preferences by office. They have different licenses by office because in Arkansas, they want you to have a license for an expired fishing license. In Texas or Alabama, you don't have to have a lot of licenses. And so if I'm a sub and I've got office in those states, and I get invited to bid in a market where I don't have a an, a license, but it's close enough and the jobs are large enough to where I would, we have to have flow that covers that. And that's really, really detailed. And maybe the lesson here for entrepreneurs that are listening is the large companies are rarely, if ever, going to truly innovate, right? Truly innovate. And that's because they're not run by the founder. and they have a bunch of people more worried about their job and losing their job and risk,
Yeah.
they are taking a big, bold move. I would
Yeah.
argue very strongly that Amazon would have never come up with AWS if Andy Jassy was running it when they did that. It was Jeff Bezos. He was the CEO. He had actually gotten endorsed. I'm gonna go a little side because a lot of people here's I like things to take away from these things where somebody, okay, I want to go.
Yeah.
You don't remember anything about this conversation. Remember this one thing. There's a book called Trillion Dollar Coach by Eric Schmidt and some other folks, and it's talking about Bill Campbell. And Bill Campbell is a legend in Silicon Valley. He was on the board of Apple. He was the CEO of Intuit. He was on the board of Google, and he was hired by the board of Amazon because the board was going to fire Jeff Bezos, and they didn't know if it was the right decision or not. And they hired Bill to go basically determine are we going to let Jeff keep his job or not? Long story short, he obviously was able to keep his job. And then we all know what happened. Okay. So when you're a small company, you're competing against big companies. Don't be worried about the big companies. Now they have a distribution advantage you don't have, but typically don't be worried about it. More worried about the software companies, the modern companies that can go usurp what you're doing and they can beat you for whatever reason. Those are the ones you're going to really want to find your most focused competition, but don't focus on the competition, but absolutely be aware of it. Absolutely acknowledge they exist because your competition validates your market. If you walk into an investor, we have no competition. Well, you're going after a market that nobody really cares about. But if you turn around and say, hey, we have a lot of competition, and let me tell you how we're beating our competition, how we're ahead of our competition. That's really, really important. There's another book called Blue Ocean, Red Ocean. Red Ocean is there are a lot of companies in there and you can make money in a red ocean, but your tactics to go compete at red ocean versus a blue ocean would be like flying cars. There's not a lot of flying cars yet, but there will be. So right now that's a blue ocean. It will be a red ocean. So you have to understand the competitive dynamics of how you go to market.
Yeah. Well, going back to construction and the industry itself, what should, subcontractors really be paying attention to right now in terms of their blue ocean opportunity?
So I'm actually going to surprise you by saying I don't know. And when I don't know, I just say I don't know. I've never been a sub. I've been working with subs, but I've never been in a sub. And I've got people on my team that have been subs for a long time. So I've learned a lot over the last 4 years from it. But the essence of it is that it would be a little presumptive of me to say, hey, this is what subs really need to do if I've never been one. Now, from an outsider perspective, an observation is that this industry is the second slowest to adopt technology behind K through 12 education. It is littered with people who are not early adopter types. They doing it the way they're doing it. They're reticent. Now, one of the reasons is they take on a lot of risk, right? In their defense, they're taking on that cost risk. If they sign a contract, they're going to get it done. They're going to get sued if they don't they price that job right and get it done with the proper margin. So you have very high turnover in the subcontractor industry because I could be, clipping along at 80 million bucks and I've got, a lot of demand. Let's say data centers. I'm an MEP company. I'm 80 million bucks. I get in some data centers. I'm doing a good job for my customers and I take on too much and I actually go bankrupt because I've taken on too much business. That actually happens in this industry. Get ahead of your capital. So that's a problem. So applying technology appropriately is not easy for contractors. The other thing is if you look online right now and say, what percentage of the construction industry is going to retire in the next 5 to 10 years? There are estimates that are as high as 41%. Literally
Yeah.
41% of this industry is going to retire. There's a huge labor shortage of the white collar folks that are, the estimators and the schedulers and the project coordinators, the project managers and the procurement people. And so that creates opportunity. Right? If you've got labor shortage, you've got the ability to maybe go acquire market share, but you have to be very, very thoughtful about how you grow your business and not taking on too much risk.
So where does it stand? How does HyperWater fit into that equation for them in terms of looking at their business in the next 10 years? What will it do for them?
So I'm going to answer it both for them and for an individual, right? For what we're doing, we call it less noise, pure signal. We're going to give them opportunities that not only they get invited to join directly from the general contractor where they're just on an email distribution list and they receive an email, but we've got something we call hybrid leads where if I'm receiving an invitation and I'm a concrete company, I don't care if an MEP company, bids on that. I do care if another concrete company, but I don't care if an MEP or roofing company. So a hybrid lead is where our AI agents, they index the invitation from the GC to that specific concrete sub. We make a recommendation. And then what happens is we look at every single other sub on our platform that's not in concrete. And if that ITB meets 100% of our criteria, we drop it into their bid board for free, giving them new high value lead opportunities that meet the criteria that they've set and they control. And the GC can opt out of this if they want to. They can control it. Hey, I got plenty of fire stop, but I do need MEP. We obviously have the GC side of this network, and the GC side of this network is very important, and everybody needs to go and help to meet their particular criteria. That's on one example on the supplier side is to be very thoughtful about the jobs you pursue. You know, your percentage likelihood of winning. You can do all kinds of analysis on that. On the individual side, I'm sure you're familiar with Upwork. It's a publicly traded business. It's basically a job board for the gig economy. And this is kind of an announcement. Nobody knows this, but we're going to roll out an Upwork for pre-construction. So it's not Upwork,
Nice.
but it's Upwork for pre-construction because the people that are retiring or near retirement, a lot of them want to earn money, right? They just
Yes.
don't work at a business, in a business, have to go to an office, everything else. So like Upwork, they can hang their shingle. Hey, I'm an MEP expert. I've got, 30 years experience. I've got a lot of experience in these markets because building a hotel in, Miami, in New Orleans and in California and up in Minnesota, you get a lot of different parameters you can kind of understand, right? So if I'm a lender, if I'm an owner developer, or if I'm a general contractor, and I need that expertise, I can now hire it by the job, by the hour, by the week, as opposed to
Mhm.
having a full-time person. And if I'm a general contractor and I'm under 100 to under 150, definitely under $100 million, I don't have the revenue and margins to support what's called a pre-con department, pre-construction department. But I go hire somebody for a couple hours, a project or whatever, to give me that expertise. And so we believe that that's going to be something that's not only powerful, but Kimberly, if I've been in the industry 30 years and I'm one of these, MEP experts, I have relationships with general contractors.
Yeah,
So this
absolutely.
becomes this kind of use your usage to teach you and then machine learn, right? So this is what I'm doing. So now this person who's retiring, they don't want to work full time for somebody else. They're going to charge $125 an hour. And then what they're going to do is they're going to earn money based on their expertise. But then if they introduce us to a general contractor and that general contractor becomes a customer, we give them a percentage of the revenue that we generate from that general contractor and the ecosystem of subs that GC gets on board. And if they want to become the customer success manager because they have relationships with them, everything else, and we train them what customer success is, we got to screen a little bit more for that kind of customer, then they get an extra percentage. So they get a pretty solid percentage of the revenue that we generate from that ecosystem of general contractors for as long as that subcontractor, excuse me, as long as that, we call them experts, as long as that expert is on the platform and they're billing and they're adding value, we're going to continue to pay them, which makes it more motivational for them to, not walk away from literally tens of thousands of dollars a month or a year.
Yeah. I mean, you're really thinking about this from an empire perspective. So I guess I am curious, the old adage, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? What are your first few bites here? I mean, I mean, Leah, I gotta hand it to you, visionary thinking you definitely have. How do you start walking through what the steps look like to get there and actually build this all out?
It's a really insightful question. So marketplaces, we're an in-sided marketplace. We're not eBay. We got one buyer, one seller. We're not a three-sided marketplace where you have a GC, a sub, and a supplier. We're an in-sided marketplace because we have lenders who want to be involved. We have owners, developers. We have, let's say, I'm a surety or I'm an insurance company. I want to get leads on this, right? So we're an in-sided marketplace. They are really, really, really hard to build. And they're very attractive for venture, but venture also knows they're really hard to build. Concept. So if you think about eBay, um, or if you think about LinkedIn, if I was around the 503rd resume on LinkedIn, like why would I do that? Because there are no recruiters, and the recruiter, why would I go in there? There's only 500. Well, they solved that problem. We can get into how and why all that. But what they didn't do is they did not add value in single player mode. So if you're going to build a network, you have to add value in single player mode. Now, everybody here, most people have Instagram, but you got an Instagram card, right? So Instagram started as bourbon. It was a filter that you take a picture and you apply to a filter, and they used a then Facebook API that no longer exists to share it on Facebook. Okay. Um, and it added enough value for you as someone, you came back and you did these photos and filters and all that, and they had so many hiccups, and they had this Facebook API, right? Well, that allowed the user to get enough value while they were building out all the functions we know about Instagram right now. So they didn't start out with a network. Dropbox didn't start out where I could share a file with you. It started out where I could share a file between my laptop at home or my computer at home and my computer in my office. And that was their first thing. And they added a lot of value in single player mode, but I couldn't send you a file, couldn't send you a link, right? That was only down the line. So what we're doing is we have spent a maniacal amount of focus and time on adding value in single player mode for a GC, adding value in single mode for a sub. Very simple. Let's say no GC's ever heard of it and no subs ever heard of it, but we're this performance contracting group. We get thousands on a weekly basis. All we have to do is just forward these bid invitations to our own account, and the AI is going, they're building the calendar, they're helping with the recommendation, doing everything else. It doesn't matter if the GC's ever heard about it or not, because we built a model where we're an AI overlay. We're not something where we got to say, hey, GC, go rip up your software you send out. That'd be really, really slow to start. We're an AI overlay looking at the email traffic. And so that way we can go add value in single player mode for the sub. But then on the supplier piece, suppliers spend billions of dollars a year as an industry trying to find who are the bidding subs on that project. Let's go back to the Embassy Suites Hotel. A good supplier with a good sales rep organization, they're going to know the Embassy Suites Hotel is being built. Okay.
Hmm.
They may even know one or two or all of the GCs that are bidding that job. So what do they do today? They pick up the phone. Hey, let's go to lunch, or I'll take you to the ball game, or, we went to college, or here's a couple $100 on the table. All this stuff happens so that the supplier knows who are the bidding subs on this job. They will pay for that.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, Uber and Airbnb tapping in new supply. The only thing we're asking for the GC to do is to change the software that they're tracking the bids on, not distributing the bids, not receiving the bids, just tracking the bids on, because that's the source of truth. Who are the bidders on the platform? And the suppliers will pay a lot of money. This goes back to carrier and train for this, 20% of 9 million to $15 million. Train will pay a lot of money to know who are the bidding subs on this platform, because their sale is multiple millions of dollars. And we share a percentage, a big percentage of that revenue with the subcontractor who got carrier on the flip. And we share a big percentage with the GC who got there. And you're going to think, oh, that's great. They can earn money off the platform. It's really cool. And that is interesting. But as I talk to more and more GCs, they're very sharp. They understand their business. They said, no, that's cherry on top. Yeah, we'll take the money. That's obviously. But having more suppliers calling on my subs is going to create a lower overall cost because you have a more efficient market. And I like the fact that you're incentivizing the subs to get their favorite suppliers on there, because that's who they're going to prefer to work with. But if
Yeah.
that's is in a new market, or all these different dynamics, they may raise their hand and say, hey, I want to talk to suppliers. And we actually charge a supplier a little bit more for that lead because the sub has overtly said, hey, we want to talk to new suppliers. So it's this dynamic where um, we're trying to, you have to be, you've heard this kind of 10x better. You got to be 10x better. You can't be just there. And so this dynamic of this inside marketplace, we have to add value at the where it starts. You go back to the microcosm for where it starts for us is the sub getting
So,
value, single player mode. Are they happy? Because if the buzz gets out with the general contractors that, hey, your subs are going to be thankful that you had invited them. Another nuance here, we have a completely free, it's called Forever Free, permanent tier that's very, very robust. Because if I'm a GC and I'm in a new market and I don't have any gravity, I'm just trying to get people to bid the job. If I
right.
do this and they got to pay to do business with me, I'm DOA. I'm dead in the water. So
Yeah.
having a robust, permanently free tier that allows for the subcontractor to do everything they need to do, and we're not really worried about monetizing that sub. We want to, and we're giving them opportunities, but the real money, it's Willie Sutton. Right? Why do you rob banks? It's where the money is. So the money's really on the supplier side. So if you're building a marketplace, you have to add value in single player mode. You have to focus on who's your primary customer, and you have to get liquidity in the marketplace with a lot of transactions so that you can monetize that marketplace at its maximum potential.
Yeah. So curious then, in the kind of leading into the future of all of this, but knowing that you are really solving first for this subcontractor, if you could make one barrier disappear for them, if I gave you a magic wand and make that go away, what would that unlock? What would it be, and what would that
Yeah,
unlock?
I love that question. It is the focused time of a subcontractor or a GC to actually listen to what we do. Another insight for this is good for your entrepreneurs. Your customers did not wake up this morning thinking about how excited they are to meet you today to talk about your product, but they got their own problems. And time and attention and focus is really, really hard. That's why introductions are such a big deal. Kimberly, if you and I never met, I cold called you and you were a sub or you're a GC, you're maybe 1% of the time, right? But if one of the folks that you really respect in the industry said, "Hey, Kimberly, I think you ought to meet with Lee. This is what he wants to talk about. Would you take the call?" Based on your respect for that person and your time, because you may be in a shit show for personal reason. But if you can carve out your time, that introduction is actually a reprioritization of your time. Because you didn't
Yeah.
wake up this morning thinking, "Hey, I want to meet Lee. I've never heard of Lee." But now somebody you really, really think highly of said, "You've got to spend time on this," right? Okay, I'll begrudgingly do it, right? And then what the entrepreneur needs to do is they need to get 30 seconds to wow. They need in 30 seconds, they need to capture your attention. And if they don't do
Great
that, it's
advice.
going to lose it. But if they have a meeting and if that person that made the introduction actually comes into the meeting with us, then that's sending a signal to you that, hey, this is worth my time. This is really worth your time. Right. Now you
Wow.
have to have big sales and that can't do something where you're charging, $20 a month. Right. There's a different dynamics there. So you have to understand it's called the venue. A friend of mine named Paul Bettner, he built Words with Friends and they built Words with Friends so that you could make a move at a stoplight. Think about that. The way that they built
So
that is they built an application where you can make one move at a stoplight, you can make another move down the line. And there are other games where you're going to sit down in front of your TV and you're going to be multitasking. You're on a laptop or you're on a pad. You have different functions. You have different games, different components of that. I'm not a gamer, but I learn a lot from the gaming industry because it's a very innovative, it's a very fertile venue of building games. And I'm going to give people another thing to go watch. So if you're building a marketplace, the best content on the internet by far, I mean, it's not even close, is a venture firm called NFX for network effects. These are the guys that started Truly and Zillow, and they've invested in over 100 marketplaces. They have a 3-hour masterclass on network effects. There's a partner, his name is Gigi Weiss out of Israel, and he has about a 30-minute section, and 7 minutes of that is on a company called Steam, or it's called a company called Valve, which runs Steam. Steam is the iOS app store for PC gaming. Okay? It's not iOS, it's not app, it's PC gaming. And they have so many they have 4 layers of network effects, and NFX has found 16 different types of network effects. But Steam has embedded 4 layers of network effects, and their revenue per employee is $6 million per employee, is just the revenue per employee. You know how profitable you can be at $6 million revenue? It's a $2 billion business. And Fortnite, which is the game that's owned by Epic, has 50 million daily users. And they're trying to kick out Steam, but because of the defensive network effects Steam is built in, layered in their model, Epic literally just laid off 1,000 people last week. They can't
wow.
with Steam. And that's why these marketplace models are so attractive, but they're so freaking hard to build.
So if you could leave business owners with big vision, and again, they're up at night, they've been working on this problem. If you could leave them with a few lessons from your experience or your journey, you could only leave 3, let's say, what would they be?
First is be intellectually curious. I tell my kids, I tell my team, people who are intellectually curious and fast learners are the ones that will succeed in life. If you feel like you've got the answer, you're not interested in learning, the opposite of intellectual curiosity, I think that you're going to basically retard your ability to be successful in life. That's number one. Number two is it is just as hard to build a $10 million business that it is a $100 billion business. You just have to make better decisions. You have to go after better markets. And you may not want to build a large company, right? There's just the other dynamics. But when I grew up in my first 7 years of business, when I started with Dell, we were 59 million. When I left 7 years later, we were 4.5 billion. Now I think it's a 240 or 140, it's a $140 billion company, right? They just made better decisions. And there were 400 companies doing exactly what Dell did when I joined him. It wasn't like he was, had some patent and nobody could touch it. He was in a red ocean, right? But he obviously figured out how to build a business in a red ocean. And the other thing is that always find ways to improve the lives of your customers. If you are thinking about your customer first, you're not thinking about your business model or you're thinking about your stuff, you're thinking about solving the problems of your customers, then you're going to find a lot of opportunity. Henry Ford is famous saying, hey, you can have any Ford color you want as long as it's black. Well, that was back when nobody else was building cars at scale and everything else, and he could do that. Last I checked, Ford's not doing as well as it once was. I'm not saying it has that current mentality, but you look at the companies that are absolutely totally obsessed by customer service, the Zappos of the world, the Amazons of the world, the FedExes of the world. Those are the ones that have fundamentally changed their industry. It's because they continually were interested in solving that business problem, and they were intellectually curious about not only the customer's business problem, but other ways they could apply their expertise, their technology to it. And they had the grit and determination and passion to go through the hard times because let me tell you, it's effing hard.
When you think about what success looks like from a yearly, what does that look like for you?
It's a great question. The reason I'm an entrepreneur is that I want to pick the people I work with. When I was at Dell for 7 years, I had 14 bosses. No, I had 17 bosses. 14 I would take a bullet for. Two I'd step out of the way, and one I might turn the gun on you. That's a little joke, but the dynamics are when you work for a company, you're told who you work with. And long story short, there were some really sharp people there, but there were some people that weren't very sharp. And I had, I was kind of full of piss and vinegar. I thought I was pretty smart. And I didn't want to work for people that I thought were less intelligent than me. I want to work with people and around people who are smarter than me because I want to learn from them. And so I started my own business, not because I want to make money or I want to solve this business problem. I saw the business because I want to pick who I work with because I was pretty confident that if I picked smart enough people, we would figure it out. If we got lucky, we do something that's pretty big. But picking who I worked with was a really, really big deal.
Final question I like to ask, save this for the end. But, in life, I mean, to your point, none of this is easy, and everybody's at different stages of growth and development when it comes to building a business. What is the unfinished business of your entrepreneurial journey right now?
So I spent some time with Mike Jones. Mike Jones was a CEO of MySpace. It ultimately failed as a business, but he was a very, very brilliant entrepreneur. I like helping entrepreneurs. One of the reasons I'm here is giving my time. I want to give time back because I've so many people have shared their advice with me. And so, um, I really want to have a long-term business like what Mike has today. He has a company that either it's their own internal ideas or people bring him ideas. And he has specific expertise about how to tap into these large marketplaces and get to scale quickly. He has no outside investors. It's his own money. So he doesn't have to, return money. It's called OPM, other people's money. He doesn't have OPM. And all he's doing is helping entrepreneurs. And I think I'm never going to retire. And I think applying my expertise, whatever God's bestowed upon me, to be in that position, I think would be really cool of how many people we impact.
Lee, I want to acknowledge you. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared and really, again, we're going to work every day with a particular person in mind. I can tell that you're a lifelong learner. I can tell you're mission driven, and I wish you all the success. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. One last thing that I haven't mentioned, I should have, is, and I tell this to my kids, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, then you are right. And it's when you get into self-doubt, it's when you get into the negative thoughts of like, hey, this is a bad day. I'm going to get a shit show going to work. Don't let that overcome your ability to believe in yourself. Because when you stop believing in yourself, that's when your dreams start to die.
Agree more. Thanks, Lee. We'll be sure and link everything in the show notes if you want to reach out to Lee personally, but we'll definitely make sure that you have the ability to contact HyperWater. And we look forward to visiting with you next time. Thanks.